Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show again. Up first, hazardous weather graphic here. High wind warnings out. Had the watch out yesterday for the Kaktovik Barter Island area. Today, high wind warning out for the eastern coast all the way over to Demarcation Point. Winds gusting 50 to 60 miles an hour today here along this area, Kaktovik, Dead Horse, Alpine Airstrip, for example. So a really windy day up there today, and the warning's out for the eastern stretch here, Prudhoe Bay in there until 6 p.m. this evening, in which case winds will be coming down. They're coming down considerably back to the west. In fact, high pressure building in there, precipitation stopped, and winds are way down, but still gusting, again, 50 to 60 miles an hour. And for Kaktovik Barter Island, Flaxman Island, looking at the warning to stay out until midnight tonight. And by that time and after, conditions will improve dramatically. Otherwise, high wind advisory here for the southeastern Brooks Range for this evening and tonight, or for the overnight hours tonight, are currently out until then. Winds gusting 40 miles an hour out of the southwest. And then out here we have for St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, that's a high surf advisory that kicks into effect 6 a.m. tomorrow morning on Sunday and remains out until 6 p.m. Monday. And that's for this persistent southwest flow we've got coming up across the Bering Sea, and that's going to build the seas. And that could result in some minor beach erosion there on the probably south-facing side of St. Lawrence Island, and the same thing here on the Bering Strait coast. And again, that's out through Monday and kicks in tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Moving on to the fire danger graphic here, we've improved a lot here back to the west with the rainfall. In fact, from the Brooks Range here up across the north slope today, anywhere from a third to half an inch of rain fell in the last 12 hours with that system as it's pushing off to the east, and that's why it's really knocked it down up here from what it was. Still not so quite widespread extreme fire danger area there over the upper Yukon Valley, but it still holds. And not a lot of change here over southern Alaska. Still some extreme fire danger, very dry conditions, the Copper River Basin with the, just from the weather pattern the last month, and also in the Susitna Valley. 75 today in areas of the Susitna Valley, mostly the western Susitna Valley. Had mid-70s today. So temperatures were down from yesterday, not into the 80s, but a little bit cooler, but still warm enough. And then high fire danger to very high fire danger down the Kenai Peninsula and up into northern Cook Inlet. Satellite imagery today showing this system moving eastward across the Arctic coast north slope, and a weak trailing edge with a lot of cloudiness actually here all the way back to the Norton Sound area and Seward Peninsula. Actually a lot of cloudiness all the way down across Bristol Bay to the Alaska range, or the Aleutian Range and the Alaska Peninsula, with the Bering Sea pretty well socked in with clouds, as well as the Aleutians. Looks like we had some clearing up here over the Noatak Valley area, Kivalina from Kotzebue on up, the northwest, a very small area there. And also clear over Cook Inlet due to the stabilizing effect of the cooler water there, but the Kenai Peninsula cloudy, a few scattered isolated light showers here over the southeast interior, nothing really significant at all. And some thunderstorms today, all developing well east of the border, right over in this area of the Northwest Territories, Yukon and Canada there. But there's still a risk one might pop up this evening here in toward Northway, Tok, and Besna. Otherwise, convection, thunderstorm, lightning pretty well shut down. And here's this system passing by to the north, the southeast coast. Big upper level cyclonic flow here over the Gulf of Alaska. You can see the clouds there, and that sends one band of moisture northward here today, bringing some rainfall. Nothing too significant, just kind of cloudy, showery, and damp. Hoeppner and Angoon picked about 2/10 of an inch today, while Juneau had about 1/10 of an inch. And those are the heavier amounts. Down to the south, maybe 1500ths or 5 to 1500ths in areas there. That was about it. So just kind of a cloudy day. Looks like some breaks showing up there over Dixon Entrance in the southern areas. And that whole pattern should improve slowly with less shower chances here as we move into tonight and into tomorrow and through Monday. Pretty good clearing here. Northwest flow actually coming across the range there. So we got clearing southwest Kodiak Island and along and south of the Alaska Peninsula. North side, though, still picking up some light precipitation with all that moisture hitting interacting with the terrain, giving enough lift to wring a little bit of moisture out there on the north side from Pilot Point on down to Nelson Lagoon, maybe Cold Bay. And generally not too bad out here over the Aleutians. We got some cloudiness down there to the south with a system that's still off the map, otherwise high pressure, light winds, and that keeping the skies cloudy with areas of fog. Pretty good flow starting to develop here on the north side of this ridge in conjunction with this eastward moving low. Here's the low and the fairly tight gradient with that, giving these strong wind gusts across the eastern Arctic coast today. But you can see no gradient. I could have actually dropped that H in there behind that thing. High pressure with light winds and dry conditions, but still a lot of clouds. Scattered showers. Areas of smoke didn't seem to be too significant today over the interior. And these showers over the Panhandle. Otherwise, not much going on out there in the Bering Sea, but watch this low tonight. Starts to get its act together a little bit. A lot of precipitation with that, but for now, some of it might slip on in late tonight into the area from, say, I'd say north of Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, on up to Point Lane. Maybe a sprinkle will reach Wainwright by early morning. Otherwise, big improvement here over the east side. Lose the winds, lose the precipitation, maybe get some clearing. Just some isolated showers with whatever is left over from that frontal boundary over the northern interior. Very light and scattered, otherwise just variably cloudy, fair. Possible areas of smoke here from Tanana Valley all the way down into the North Gulf Coast. Look for some possible clearing there. Still some lingering showers over the northern Panhandle with possible clearing in the south later on. Risk of a thunderstorm here over the Wrangell Mountains, I guess eastern Alaska range, just a very slight chance. And that happens again tomorrow. Still enough moisture over there, a little maybe unstable enough for a thunderstorm or two, but most of the action will be off into Canada once again. This trough takes most of the showers out of the area for the Panhandle. Look for a partly sunny day tomorrow there with light winds and a little bit more sunshine here over interior Alaska, south central Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Valley as well into the central upper Tanana Valley. And that warm front brings light rain to the central Arctic coast now. And pretty good gradient here, strong southwest wind, so that's why we have the high surf advisory out for St. Lawrence Island and Bering Strait coast. Otherwise, high pressure still holding over the southeast Bering Sea. One really weak disturbance moves on in that southwest flow for clouds, a few showers, or maybe some drizzle, areas of fog, Kuskokwim Bay into Bristol Bay. Then it'll improve behind that, and a very weak system here south of Adak and Atka. That's going to bring a chance of rain into those areas. Could kick the winds up maybe 25 miles an hour in gusts in a small area there. Otherwise, look for the winds to increase here over the western Aleutians as that front approaches. Definitely small craft advisories with that, and even stronger winds up here over the northwest Bering Sea. And then the outlook for Monday. That system actually weakens here and just barely moves eastward. Again, upper level high pressure building over the interior again tomorrow, and that's going to hold this thing back, trying to push in but doesn't quite make it. Leftover moisture here, resulting in some scattered showers and variably mostly cloudy skies there up over the northwest interior. Sunny, warmer, highs in the 70s to lower, maybe mid-80s here from the eastern interior, right on down Kuskokwim Valley, northeast Bristol Bay, maybe the Kenai Peninsula, Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, probably back into the 70s, risk of a thunderstorm once again. Partly to mostly sunny. I'll be optimistic there for the Panhandle, and shower-free for the day on Monday with light winds. Moving on to the forecast lows for tonight, upper 40s to mid 50s for the southeast coast, 50 to 55 eastern interior, lower to mid 50s here back to the west with upper 40s Nunivak Island and the Bering Sea, as well as the Aleutians, near 50 for the Alaska Peninsula, 40 for the low, give or take, North Slope and Arctic coast. Highs tomorrow, 50s north of the Berks Range, otherwise 70 to 75 here, eastern interior, and 70s, maybe even approaching 80. Kenai Peninsula to Susitna Valley, that might be pushing it, but you'll be definitely well into the 70s like Big Lake and Talkeetna, and otherwise mid-70s Copper River Basin, 60s mid to upper in some areas for the Panhandle, followed by lows again in the lower to mid-50s. 50s over much of the interior, upper 50s southern Alaska, mid-40s to maybe near 50 for the Arctic coast, and no change out over the Bering Sea. Highs on Monday, warmer, 75 to 80 Susitna Valley from the Kenai Peninsula, 80 to 83 for the Copper River Basin, back in the lower 80s over the eastern interior, with upper 70s there at Tanana, and 70-degree weather trying to build back to the west there a little bit, maybe to Galena. Otherwise, mid-50s to lower 60s along the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And on to flying weather, about the same pattern we've seen with the IFR out here over the Bering Sea. A little bit of marginal there down to the southeast here across the Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay. A lot of marginal VFR tomorrow morning, potentially. Pretty far to the east here across the southern half of the state. Northern part there from Koyukuk, Kobuk, Selawik Valleys, Yukon, on up to the Arctic coast, pretty much VFR. IFR along the Kenai Peninsula, right up from the east side of Kodiak Island to Montague Island, and then another zone IFR here along and off the southeast coast. And that burns off or dissipates to VFR for the entire southeast coast tomorrow afternoon. Pretty good here over the eastern half of the state, maybe possibly some lingering marginal VFR here along the Alaska Range. Probably won't be too big a deal. And then more widespread marginal VFR here as you get into the Kuskokwim Valley on out to some IFR over the northern Bering Sea. And pretty much marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula from Unalaska Island across the Pribilofs. And for the following morning, a lot of IFR here, western southwest Bering, and just about all the Aleutians. Marginal VFR here as you head east, northern Bering, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, and again, some possible marginal VFR here, Cook Inlet in the Wrangell Mountains over here toward the, actually even up toward Nebezna maybe. Otherwise VFR eastern interior, VFR north slope, and the eastern Arctic coast VFR, with lowering conditions back here to the west, and IFR staying off the coast or in the Gulf of Alaska here. Marginal VFR may be hitting the coast of Prince of Wales Island and up there around Yakutat to Cape Yakataga. Otherwise, that's about it. And for Monday afternoon, VFR for the southeast coast, marginal VFR there from Dixon Entrance, right along the coastline, probably to Cape Decision. And then the North Gulf Coast, still a threat of some marginal VFR, the IFR staying off both coasts. Marginal for Kodiak, VFR, Bristol Bay, Cook Inlet, and probably Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, northward, all the way to the North Slope. And the Arctic coast may be mostly VFR with the lower stuff just hanging offshore. South side of the Western Brooks Range, marginal down the west coast, IFR, Bering Sea, and the Aleutians. Passes tomorrow, both Anatuvik and Adigan will be probably occasionally marginal. I don't think it'll be marginal the entire day, but probably mostly marginal. It'll be kind of marginal for Adigan as well. And Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR. It'll be clouds, maybe some showers around. Definitely more chance of clouds of the VFR category. Same forecast for rainy VFR. Now windy could be possibly marginal, but they'll become VFR later in the day. And for Isabel, VFR, Mentasta, VFR, and or marginal becoming VFR, and for Tanita, actually Mentasta, let me back that one up. Marginal VFR becoming VFR and a chance of a thunderstorm there for Mentasta, Tanita, VFR, and for Portage, starting out marginal, becoming VFR during the morning, or it may just be VFR the entire day, but morning hours, early tomorrow will be the chance you'd see the lowest conditions if they were marginal. Chilcoot and White, marginal to start, VFR to finish. And the freezing levels 8 to 10,000 feet here across the southeast coast in the Gulf of Alaska. And this system pulling eastward here with that Arctic jet kind of oscillates the freezing level lines around a little bit. Got 2,000 feet now up off the Arctic coast. Pretty good gradient there supporting that jet, 10,000 feet into the, around just north of Indian Mountain. And then 10,000 feet across the entire Bering Sea, actually northward into the Chukchi Sea, and then 12,000 here right along the Aleutians. Icing, not much of a threat here. This mostly staying to the north of the Arctic coast, just grazing it a little bit. And some icing here into the central Aleutians with a system there coming northwestward. And then the heavier icing here, that's going to be pushing eastward after tomorrow night and into Monday. And then for the jet stream, it's that upper trough associated with the storm out over the Russian Far East that's gradually pushing eastward but won't actually make it all the way into the interior. Otherwise, high pressure aloft redeveloping over mainland Alaska, 9,000 feet, high pressure light winds to the south, and then those increasing winds here, 25 to as high as 40 knots out of the southwest. Same thing at 3,000 feet, some 30 to 40 knot winds. Turbulence looking like this, all the heavy turbulence will be up there with the wind from the western Brooks Range down to St. Lawrence Island.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined once again by the science liaison of GINA, Eric Stevens. GINA, of course, is the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And GINA is all about satellites, and Eric is always here to tell some really cool stuff about satellites. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about how the weather satellites can see clouds and what's under the clouds, but you're telling me that satellites can do a lot more, even protect the general public with aviation safety information.
That's right. There's one particular aspect of satellites we're going to talk about today that might not be immediately obvious, and that is detecting things in the atmosphere that are not clouds, that are not snow, not rain, but rather a hazard that can happen here in Alaska, and that is volcanic ash.
Of course.
When a volcano goes off, puts ash in the air, this is of course a hazard to the public if the ash were to fall on the ground in accumulating amounts.
Sure.
Additionally, while the ash is in the air, and this is the more frequent hazard, is it's a hazard to aviation because you cannot fly an airplane into volcanic ash without great risk. Worst case scenario, the ash gets into a jet engine, wrecks the engine, kills the engine, and now you have an airplane flying with no engines. It won't fly for long. So aviators need to avoid that ash. How do you avoid the ash? You have to know where it is by identifying it with a satellite image and perhaps predicting then where the ash will flow with the overall weather patterns. Satellites are so important for identifying when a volcano goes off and then tracking the ash after the volcano injects the ash into the atmosphere.
Now, are you talking about seeing the heat signature or a huge volcanic plume with a cloud that we're used to seeing in the really pretty pictures of any Alaska volcano that's erupted recently, Redoubt, for example? Or are we talking about the really fine details? Because this is polar orbiting satellites, the ones that are very low to the ground, right?
The geostationary satellites can do some detection. The polar orbiters, like you say, they're closer to the Earth. They give the even better view. In answer to your question, I would say all of the above.
Oh, okay.
A heat signature from a volcano going off with all the heat that comes with the eruption, that can be identified in infrared imagery.
Okay.
We've got images from the Kamchatka Peninsula. That's the far eastern part of Russia on the western side of the Bering Sea, loaded with volcanoes.
Right.
You know, Alaska has plenty of volcanoes of its own. We can also be affected when a volcano goes off in Kamchatka, say, and then the weather carries that ash toward Alaska from the west.
Right.
You can see the infrared heat signature, like you say. Also, the ash in the air can be detected by doing some sophisticated channel differencing within the satellite data. You can find the identification of sulfur dioxide, say, that's a component of the volcanic emission, and you can trace this with the satellite imagery. Sometimes volcanoes go off that haven't gone off before, and we're not expecting them to go off. Say if there's no seismometers around a given volcano that hasn't gone off in 100 years, you might not be expecting it to go off in the satellite imagery. Since satellites can be globally comprehensive, that might be the first sign that you have that a volcano in an unexpected area is going off.
That's a good backup system. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And people are working all the time on automating the interrogation of satellite data by computers to provide a first alert to to a human, so the software will say, we think this might be important. Human, go take a closer look. Because the people are still the best way to interrogate the imagery, but the planet's a big place, and we can't be looking everywhere all the time, so the software helps give a first cut. And then in Alaska, there's a special kind of surprise angle where the satellites are helpful, and that is the Katmai eruption of 1912. Huge eruption. There is still somewhat of a moonscape out there in southwest Alaska where all this ash is laying on the ground. And sometimes a strong weather pattern comes along where we have roaring northwest winds that go across the Alaska Peninsula there and can actually pick some of this ash up off the ground. No volcano is going off. This was more than 100 years ago that volcano actually blew. So you're not going to see a heat signature like we were discussing. There will be no seismic signature of a volcano going off. So those data sets, they'll say, oh, no problem. But you can see in some of the satellite imagery this ash, as it's called, resuspended. When the wind comes along, picks it up, the ash can be lofted a few thousand feet in the air just with the wind. And an airplane flying into that plume is exposed to some danger. So we need to track that ash to provide guidance to aviators that you don't want to be flying here at these elevations in this area. We've got some imagery of the resuspension, and you can see the wind blowing strongly from the northwest, picking up the ash and blowing it down to the southeast. And so that's another, perhaps not immediately obvious hazard of volcanic ash. Katmai is the gift that keeps on giving, for sure.
Very good. So we've got satellites that can help us understand the weather from the past and the immediate past. And we talked last time about how that's feeding into the forecast modeling to help improve predictions. But now they're also protecting the general public with aviation-sensitive information and watching volcanoes, whether they're erupting or maybe have erupted in the past, and finding the left-behinds from those volcanic events there. So really impressive stuff. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again today. And you're a gift that keeps on giving from the satellite community, so thanks a lot, and we hope to have you back again soon. Again, Eric Stevens with Dehne at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And if you'd like to check out any of the information that Eric has shared with us again today, you can do that very easily by going to www.dehne.alaska.edu. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Again, nothing really noticeable as far as any changes out here. Holding about stationary status quo through the entire area there. Some minor oscillations depending on which way the wind, with the wind and of course the currents. And looks like over the next 5 days, still that forecast that's going to pull back east and northeast there due to the storminess that's been rolling by. And for the coastal water forecast for the southeast coast, up on the north coast, west-northwest at 10, seas 3 feet, and then north to northwest at 10 to 15 on the south coast with 3-foot seas. Variable to north or northwest breezes over the central and southern inside waters with pretty slight seas, and south 15 for northern Lynn Canal. Outlook for Monday. Variable 10 knots, about sums it up there for the entire area here over the inside waters, both north and south. Along the coast, though, north 15 on the south coast, seas staying at pretty good there at 3 feet, and then northwest 10 to 15 with 2 to 3 foot seas up on the north coast. And moving over to Cook Inlet, west at 10 tomorrow, seas 2 feet, west 15 for Kamishak Bay with 3 foot seas, and then 10 knot winds for the Barren Islands. The North Gulf Coast, west 10 knots. Same thing for Prince William Sound, west winds 10 knots. Seas 2 feet in the Sound and even out here in the coastal area, the outer coast, 2 foot seas in the forecast. And then for Monday, southwest at 10 here for Cook Inlet with seas at about 2 feet, 2 to 3 feet, west 15 with 3 foot seas for Kamishak Bay. Southwest 15 for both the Barren Islands and the western North Gulf Coast. And those seas staying down there about 3 feet. And then southwest at 10, light winds continue there for both the eastern North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, light northwesterly breezes on the east side of the island there with 15 out of the west for Shelikof Strait. And the Alaska Peninsula, well, from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev here on the Pacific side, northwest at 15, west 15 from Cape Sarachev all the way up across Bristol Bay, seas running 3 to 4 feet. And for Monday, Bristol Bay, light winds out of the south at 10 knots, and then we got small craft advisories here, south side of the peninsula, 25-knot winds from the east, southeast 20 on the Bering Sea side. Sitkinak on up there about 10 knots light from the southwest, and 15 knots for Kodiak Island, seas 3 to 4 feet. Fox Islands tomorrow, Unalaska Island, southeast 15 to 20, Umak Island picking up to 25 knots into the afternoon. Small craft advisories there, right across Adak and Atka. Winds will be as high as 30 knots out of the east for this area. Central Aleutians will seas building toward 10 feet. And then southwest 30, that'll be increasing in the latter part of the afternoon. That's going to be mostly west of Kiska and affecting only Shimei and Attu with that front affecting the area. And then that'll fall back to about 25 knots on Monday out there, west 20 from Kiska over toward Adak, and then northwest 25, Adak and Atka, northwest 20 to 25, 6-foot seas, and kind of a squirrely wind pattern here as you get over toward Nikolsky, and then front Alaska Island, maybe Umak Island, east at 25. That'll be good for small craft advisories. Southwest coast, west-southwest at 15, southwest 15 for the Pribilofs. Small craft advisories for both St. Matthew Island and St. Lawrence Island for 25-knot winds, seas up to 8 feet. Small craft advisories hold through Monday there for St. Lawrence Island, south 25, 10-foot seas, 11-foot seas with the same winds for St. Matthew Island, and southeast 15 here for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, the Pribilofs, south 15 for the Yukon Delta coastline. And for the Arctic coast here, we'll go from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, south 30 knots tomorrow, 6 to 8-foot seas, east 30 knots up to probably Point Lay or so, with seas also running about 6 feet there, and east 15 for the central coast, southeast 20 there for the eastern stretch of the coastline, 4-foot seas. And the following day, small craft advisories return here to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southwest 20 on the central coast, small craft advisories, west side 25 to 30 knot winds. And for tonight again, high wind warning ends here for the east side. You can see a lot better conditions. Next system brings a chance of light rain, fog, or drizzle into the western Arctic coast. Increasing southwest winds here will pull some more moisture into the Yukon Delta coast, Norton Sound. Otherwise, fair over southern Alaska, fair in the eastern interior, light winds, variably cloudy, areas of smoke, and drier for the panhandle with maybe some clearing. Could be partly sunny tomorrow, and sunny and warmer over the interior here as high pressure holds this system back to the west.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.